Hello and welcome to Game Changer. I'm Maryam Zia. Our latest UN report has confirmed that Afghan Taliban are providing financial and logistical support to banned TTP or Fitnat al-Khawarij. And this was stated in the report, that is the 31st report of the analytical support and sanctions monitoring team, and it was submitted to United Nations Security Council. It stated that quote, the status and strength of TTP in Afghanistan had not changed, but its attacks on Pakistan have significantly increased, with over 600 attacks during the reporting period, which was July to December 2024, including from Afghan territory. And of course, this report reinforces long-standing stance of Pakistan on this cross-border terrorism. This report also says that TTP's coordination with Al-Qaeda and other extremist outfits might transform TTP into an extra-regional threat. So in today's program, we'll be talking about this UN report, what it says about these extremist outfits and about Afghan-Pakistan relations, and of course, when we talk about security dimensions, those are not limited to Pak-Afghan ties, but also it has long-term impacts for and implications for regional security as well. To discuss this and more, we are joined in the studios by Brigadier retired Dr. Raashid Wali. Welcome to the program. He's Director IPRI and Security Analyst. We're also joined in the studios by Mr. Salman Javed, who is Director Pak-Afghan Forum. Welcome to the program. Dr. Raashid, let me start with you. This is the 35th report, and this holds importance. But when we look at Pakistan's stance at United Nations Security Council forums, Munir Akram Saab keep on saying about cross-border terrorism, but these facts have been mentioned in this report. What's your first take on this, keeping in mind that now TTP has emerged or has remained one of the biggest extremist group in Afghanistan?
Thank you very much. In fact, this analysis by sanctions monitoring team of United Nations, this has come up with this thing between July and December.
Yes.
We knew this all along. Whatever contents are there in this report, those were already debated, discussed, communicated by the Pakistani diplomatic channels to Afghan interim government. And this is not something that we did not know. But it's very good that it's come from a very credible international forum. And it clearly indicates the strengthening of known state actors. TTP, obviously, which impacts us directly, that's a terrorist entity, and it is getting the full support of Afghan interim government, which is very startling, by the way, because in the past it was quite a muted discussion on international forums regarding TTP's role. And this time around, I was frankly amazed to find the linkage that they say that an amount of around 40 million is being given. $4,300 million
is given directly to
yes,
TTP head.
We knew there were certain things that were very well known, that the Afghan interim government is getting $87 million per week by the United States government for humanitarian support and to keep their government and its administrative structure afloat, because Afghanistan is cut off banking channel wise, economically also assets are frozen. But those 87 millions per week which are being given, now there is a question mark on that amount as well, as to where that amount is going, whether it is going strictly according to the humanitarian needs through those channels. Maybe it is also finding to these terrorist entities. So this is a very, very serious, and
Of course.
there was another conclusion in this, that the TTP and their families are being supported.
Yes, yes,
So this
and
is
that's what I want to discuss with Mr. Salman. When we look at this report, it also mentioned about the report reveals rather that the family of TTP leader Noor Wali Masood is receiving around $43,000 per month. First, your take on this, and also when we look at the figures, it also reports that around 6,000 to 6,500 fighters of TTP are present in Afghanistan, making it one of the biggest extremist organization operating from Afghanistan at this point in time. But at the same time, when we look at the response of Afghan government regarding this report, they are denying it and they are labeling it as mere propaganda.
So about the amount that they are receiving, the Noor Wali Masood's family, which is there residing in Kabul, it's like Dr. Saab mentioned, that it's not something which is very secretive. It's an open secret. It's been known by Pakistan all along. It's been known by the regional stakeholders and international players as well. It's something which is there because Pakistan was sending delegations after delegations to negotiate with someone who was sitting over there on the behest of TTP, and that was Noor Wali Masood, who was not only meeting with Pakistani officials but also Pakistani delegations who were going from here to Afghanistan to negotiate and to settle down this issue between Pakistan and TTP. And obviously, Afghan interim government was and is adamant about it that they want to mediate between TTP and Pakistan. So denying the presence of TTP or denying that they are not receiving this much of amount over there is something which is obviously not logical or doesn't come into the account, because if you are actually trying to mediate between Pakistan and a terrorist organization, it means their presence is there. It means their top brass is there. So
and
that's
also the question arises that on one hand there is an humanitarian crisis going on in Afghanistan, and at the same time Afghan Taliban are giving this huge sum of money every month to TTP leadership.
So just last night I was discussing this with someone that the economy of Afghan interim government of Afghanistan is not in such a position that they can sustain their economy or their governance model for their countrymen. So how can they fund or funnel such amount of money to these terrorist organizations? And this is not just one terrorist organization.
Of course.
The report actually talked about a lot of other organizations, including BLA and Majid Brigade as well. So if these organizations are there and a large sum of amount is going to them, 43 million is only been talked about TTP, which has been funneled to TTP. What about Majid Brigade? What about BLA? What about TTP, Al-Qaeda? What about the other terrorist organization like ETIM or the amalgamation of what these organizations, which is now known as the Tehrik-e-Jihad-e-Pakistan.
Yes.
So all these organizations are operating from that soil, and this was actually talked about by analysts day after day since the takeover of Taliban back in 2021, that Afghanistan once again will become a magnet for all such elements from around the world. Now, if you see towards Middle Eastern crisis, right after the fall of Assad in Syria, ISIS is looking for another safe haven. The operatives of ISIS are looking for another safe haven. Afghanistan is a logical destination for them. So every other and the report not only talked about funneling of funds, they are also talking about providing of legal documents to these organizations or these operatives, because through that documentation they actually go for the transnational terrorism aspects.
So Afghanistan has become a safe haven for this. Brigadier Saab, do you think that Afghan Taliban are kind of leveraging TTP against Pakistan?
If they are doing, I think that's a very myopic approach. They are definitely doing, and there are two objectives. One is their objective to keep Pakistan under some kind of a pressure, which is a very puerile policy, because Pakistan has been supporting conduit, humanitarian aid-wise also, diplomatic support-wise also. It's just that they are captive to their ideological leanings, and then there is a pragmatic angle also. They are too fearful of reining in these elements on behalf of Pakistan, so that these elements do not band with the ISKP, Al-Qaeda, ETIM, and present a united front against them. So it's a both interplay of hardcore pragmatism on their part, a bit of myopia, and strong ideological leanings. That
And
is
historic, and of course, like you mentioned, they consider them kind of ideological cousins.
of course, and you see, what is most dangerous nowadays is that they are giving secure sanctuaries, and it is under their full support and benign gaze that those training camps in Kunad,
Yes.
Paktika, Paktia, Host, Nangarhar, and those are exactly their coordinates, lats and long. Those are known to all the international major players, and there's a fear that Afghanistan might not become a black hole of terrorism again, because there are entities like ETIM that concern China. There are Islamic movement of Uzbekistan, which are of concern to the Central Asian states. Al-Qaeda as a universal angle.
Right, and
Daesh-
Al-Qaeda in Indian subcontinent is now also
Yes.
collaborating
Yes,
with
and
TTP.
ISKP, incidentally, this has a most pernicious ideology. All other things, they would wither on the vine of pragmatism if this element, which is most dangerous, and it wishes to export the terrorism abroad on the basis of their sectarian orientation. Now they are gaining ground in Kunduz and Badakhshan up in the north, and then in the Kandahar also, Helmand province like Helmand, Kandahar, those are also gaining ground. So those areas which used to be the strong holds of Kandahari faction and up in the north of Afghanis, those are now getting encroached upon by their pockets, and which is a very dangerous.
And what might be the reason, Dr. Wali, in your opinion, behind this? Are they trying to fill the gap, or also they are using the locals? Because when we look at the increase in number of attacks in Pakistan, that is around 800 attacks, and this is of course very alarming. So do you think one of the factors might be that they are now using locals which are more familiar with the terrain of the region? And also what about the ideology? Because we see now they are more focused on attacking military targets rather than in the past they were attacking both civilian as well as military. So do you think they are trying to change their public perception as well?
More than that, it is a jostle for more power. When there is a vacuum and there is a complete fragmentation of authority, then all power brokers compete for influence. And in such an environment, the one with the bigger gun, with the bigger muscle, it carries maximum clout. This is what is happening exactly inside Afghanistan. And now there are some credible news that the Kandahari faction, which is led by Abdullah Akhundzada, which is the spiritual and temporal head of this Afghan interim government. Now this faction is also keeping its powder dry. They are trying to recruit and train their own suicide bombers for a possible scenario where there would be an internecine conflict amongst the factions, and maybe Haqqanis and Kandharis, they fight ISKP, it aligns itself with either faction. So they are all now going for this kind of force readiness, and this is a scenario that is fraught with a lot of risks of internal civil war. And if that happens, who would be the most impacted region? Obviously Pakistan, because the
of course.
refugees will make a beeline for Pakistan. Again, there would be a humanitarian crisis. So, and this is an aspect that international community should stand up and take notice.
Of course, we will be talking about the stance of international community, but Mr. Salman, coming back to the point that you mentioned earlier about the collaboration among these extremist groups and they making up this Tehreek-e-Jihad Pakistan, what kind of threat does this pose to Pakistan at this point in time? On one hand, of course, like Brigadier Sahab mentioned, that these factions, there is a strong possibility and potential that they are going to be fighting amongst themselves. But on the other hand, we are seeing that they are collaborating and making an organizational structure using all their resources combined. So what does it entails for Pakistan?
Like you mentioned that they call themselves ideological cousins, but I would call them ideological brothers, and their ideological mother is Al-Qaeda. So historically it is Al-Qaeda which actually nurtured every such element over there in this region as well as around the globe as well. So even if you see towards the inception of ISIS in Iraq, when it was ISIL, it was actually something which was an offshoot, considered to be an offshoot of Al-Qaeda over there, and then it emerged into ISIS. Foot soldiers of Al-Qaeda, they can slip towards ISIS, like Dr. Saab mentioned, but this amalgamation or this consortium of these organizations as Tehreek-e-Jihad-e-Pakistan, the threat is already there. 600 plus attacks have already been carried out on Pakistan. And not only on Pakistan, but also it's a threat towards other Central Asian countries and Iran, and also towards Russia and China, if we look at the larger picture. So this consortium, if this war machinery will solidify itself inside Afghanistan, and it will be happening over there, then the spillover effect will not only be towards Pakistan, but it will also be of global scale. So the threat is not only for Pakistan, obviously, but also for the other countries, regional and obviously global countries as well. So I don't think so that it should be seen as a threat, a regional threat, or a threat only towards Pakistan.
Of course, and in fact, the report mentions that this has potential to turn into extra regional threat or even an umbrella organization for all these terrorist threats. But coming back to the security situation in Pakistan, Dr. Wali, when we look at this report, it mentions about Brigade, and they are now recruiting women as well. And it suggests that Majid Brigade also maintains links with TTP, Islamic State, Khorasan, and other such extremist groups. How does this emerging nexus of organizations is going to be impacting internal security of Pakistan, especially when we look at organizations like BLA? How do you see they have evolved over time, especially after August 2021?
You see, these two are entirely different constructs. TTP is a ideologically motivated combination of odds and swords and criminal franchises which have banded together, and those who are exploiting this vacuum now, and they wish to establish their writ on areas that they think should be their area of influence. BLA is a different thing. That's a
ethno-nationalist.
Yeah, it's an ethno-nationalist movement. It has been there in the past. It was there on the fringe, but now it has got a new virulence. The primary reason for that is its external support by forces from across the border.
Let's talk about the Indian factor.
Indian RAW is very effectively using this as an indirect leverage, according to Ajit Doval doctrine, which said that we'll bleed Pakistan through 1,000 cuts, and instead of fighting wars which are a no-go in this nuclear era, we will exert a reflexive control on Pakistan, and we'll keep draining them, keep forcing them to spend more on low-intensity conflict, which is exactly happening in Balochistan. And Majid Brigade, that also comprises some elements which are using this narrative of ethno-linguistic, and they use rights as fig leaf, but actually their ideology is to encourage separatism, which is entirely a different thing. But at operational level there are obviously linkages, and it is those same elements which are choreographing, which are supporting through proxies, and now there are news that they are directly supporting the TTP, the financial support, it is no secret. So the same
And even the
external
logistical
actors.
support, even the knowledge of the terrain, that is very difficult when we look at the area, especially in Balochistan
Yeah.
and some areas of the KP.
Yeah, because there are geographical contiguities. The south of KP, DI Khan and areas like tribal areas, Sambaza, Gulkach and South Waziristan, it abuts areas of Balochistan. And in those areas, the geography is very hard, terrain is very difficult, and there are places where they can find refuge. And therein lies the scope for their cooperation. So they cooperate, and there was an attack on Zob cantonment in which the Baloch elements were there in collaborative mode. They actually indicated, they supported and facilitated those attackers which had come from Afghanistan essentially to attack Zob. So those kind of operational linkages and those collaborations are there. And it's also a consequence of cross-border movement, because once pressure is exerted, these BLA elements mostly go to Iran and some cross over into Afghanistan. So they find refuge there, and since they are, one thing is common, their violent struggle against the state of Pakistan. So that makes them ideal collaborators.
Right, and of course, talking about more on this point, what's your take on this, Mr. Salman? Especially when we talk about these Pakistan-focused groups like TTP, BLA, and ISKP, and they have now gathered and have been gathering under Indian umbrella. How does this impact Pakistan's internal security apparatus, and what needs to be done at this point in time? Because we know that Pakistan has had this cross-border terrorism issue for quite some time now.
Pakistan recently apprehended 3 top personals of ISIS or ISKP from Balochistan, which were trying to establish their network over here. And this was
Adil
actually
Panjshiri,
one
Abu
was Afghan,
Munzir,
one
and
was
Kaka
Uzbek, and
Yunus.
was
Yes.
I think from Iran.
Yeah.
And Panjshiri was actually one of the top most wanted personal individual in Iran,
Yes.
because he was involved in Kerman's suicide blast. So he masterminded that, and
Yes.
they were also.
But do you think that now they are going to be going back to the traditional modes of communication among themselves
It's
after
been
these
said,
arrests
it's been
were
said
made?
that because of these arrests and because of the high-handedness or you know the intelligence, how the intelligence operators actually worked over there, probably they will be going towards the manual way of communication,
Yes.
and they will be
The traditional
communicating in a traditional manner. But that said, there will be you know a counterintelligence factor of human intelligence, which has been spread across the region as well, and probably that will come into play as well from our side or from other intelligence agencies of the region. Apart from that, coming back to your questions, obviously, like I said, this consortium, it is not something which came into the mind of Wali Masood or someone sitting in Kabul. It is something which is, you know, a painting being painted by someone who is sitting on our eastern border. And they actually amalgamated all these people, all these organizations under one umbrella to launch attacks inside Pakistan, to bleed Pakistan through, like Dr. Saab said, 1,000 cuts. And this consortium, Pakistan not only need to go after them in a hot pursuit, but also coerce Afghanistan by different means and methods. One of them was economic coercion, a tactic of economic coercion. Pakistan closed down its borders. Pakistan is actually trying to push Afghan government to sit on the table and accept that these elements are working from their soil to attack on Pakistan. So I think Pakistan need to go with the soft and hard, more
kinetic
both,
and
kinetic
non-kinetic, both approaches.
Elements. Our special representative, Ambassador Sadiq, who has been reinstated on his position, he has a very good rep over there in Afghanistan, not only in, among the Taliban, but also in some other factions as well. So Pakistan need to talk to them as well, so to, you know, counterbalance this political landscape, which has been hijacked, I would say, by the entire government over there. So there are different options which Pakistan need to carry out, but most importantly, Pakistan need to reach out to the regional countries to establish a kind of consortium against this consortium of terrorism, to establish a platform from where this terrorism can be looked into, from where Afghan entanglement can be pushed and coerced and can be asked to sit on the table and do something about it.
And what might this look like when we talk about collaboration amongst the regional actors? Because we know that the sudden, of course, when the sudden withdrawal of US forces from Afghanistan in August 2021 left a huge, you know, security vacuum in the region, in the country. So how do you see the role of China in all this, especially with BRI and CPAC and with TTP attacking Chinese citizens in Pakistan? But on the other hand, we see that China is one of the countries who accepted Afghanistan's ambassador into the country at some conditions that they would be cooperating in future. So how do you see all this situation?
So Iran has also started engaging Afghanistan on the through diplomatic channels. So did Qatar, so did now UAE and Saudi Arabia. They all accepted, except Saudi Arabia. They all other countries have accepted their ambassadors, and Iran as well. Iran didn't accept their ambassador. So these regional countries, not only China but also other different countries.
Yeah, I'm
like
talking
Iran,
about China
Qatar.
because when we talk about the security threats, do you think China has some leverage over Afghan Taliban because of the economic ties between Afghanistan and China, and also because China would like to secure CPAC and BRI?
China is cautious about Afghanistan. If we look at from their perspective, they would want to invest in Afghanistan. They have sent their delegations over there. They are going into some business ventures over there as well. They have announced a lot of MOUs with the Afghan government. But what has been materialized so far on the ground is a telling story. So I think China is a bit cautious because they know that the situation over there in Afghanistan is volatile. So they would be playing some kind of role. As per information, obviously they are trying to mediate between Pakistan and Afghanistan for this issue of TTP. But apart from China, like I mentioned earlier, there are other countries as well who are playing their role. For example, UAE is trying to mediate between Pakistan and Afghanistan on this issue of TTP. But the stubbornness of Afghan interim government is right now a hurdle in this situation. And the blackmailing of TTP as well over there of the Afghan interim government is also an issue which has not been discussed too much in our in our discourse.
Dr. Wali, what's your take on this, on the role of regional players, especially when we talk about China, when we talk about Russia, and of course other players also play a significant role. But with Pakistan and China having close ties, do you think China can have some leverage over Afghan Taliban in regards to TTP?
You see, there are several regional forums. We have a trilateral forum and Pakistan, Iran, Afghanistan. Then there's a Moscow format, and there's a curtailed format of Moscow, which includes Pakistan, Iran, China, Russia. All those forums are available. There has been a regular strategic dialogue. But let's accept the fact that Afghanistan now is being ruled by a cabal that is atavistic in outlook, and the nihilism, the religious ideology, it overcomes all rationality, and they do not listen, or are they not amenable to sane advice even from the strongest allies like China, because China had its economic stakes in INEC mines and in the northern Afghanistan. They invested a lot. But then China also doesn't want to burn its fingers too much, because they have got other issues, and they would not like to get embroiled into a situation where things are so uncertain, because it is a veritable witch's brew at the moment in Afghanistan. And in a conflict scenario where non-state actors they are staking claims for the power pie, no foreign power would like to come and use. Chinese leverage was economic, and that economic leverage is curtailed, because unless the situation improves stability wise and security wise, China would have no clout. In Afghanistan, they can always repudiate all those overtures by Chinese if it comes to their ideology. So therein lies the problem. And the trouble is that you do not know what is the intent of the global powers, whether the global powers wish to see a peaceful Afghanistan, or some of those wish to see Afghanistan in a managed chaos.
And talking about the sanctions on Afghan government, international sanctions on Taliban, as we see, have led to limited influence on Taliban government and of course their ties with TTP. What alternative economic diplomatic pressures, in your opinion, are needed by the international community at this point in time? Or do you think we are still not sure how to go about when it comes to Afghanistan?
I think after Trump has taken the presidency, probably there will be a revision of policies in United States of America, because around $20 billion were, they were being fixed for Afghanistan to funnel them over the period of next 5-6 years, and around 7 to 8 billions had been already been funneled towards Afghanistan for just a population of 40 million people. So this is something which is staggering. A staggering amount of $8 billion have been funneled into Afghanistan through different NGOs, INGOs, and through platforms of United Nations. So I think when Trump will be looking towards these figures, and they have already started talking about it, and they have already said that we will be retreating back from this funding of funds,
as well,
obviously,
of course, yeah.
already shutting down or re-strategizing about how to funnel funds in different parts of the world,
and
including
also, do you
Afghanistan.
think that US government is now more focused on Ukraine and Middle East, and also
Yes.
with Trump's America First policy, Afghanistan is maybe going to be in the back burner?
Definitely. If you remember, there was a presser of Netanyahu and President Trump, and an Afghan journalist who belongs to
Yes.
channel. She asked a question about Afghanistan,
And he refused to acknowledge.
He just avoided
Yes.
to answer it. So this shows how he's looking towards Afghanistan. One thing about Trump is, which analysts say, that he never forgets his humiliation. The Doha Agreement was his, baby,
Yes.
and he was the one who was actually pursuing it rigorously. And he criticized Biden on the withdrawal, on the methodology of withdrawal. So he took as a personal humiliation, and also as a humiliation towards American state, American people, that the way they withdrew from Afghanistan was a kind of defeatist posture. So probably he'll be looking towards something which may, build up the morale of his establishment, his troops, his people, with regards to these scenarios. So I think Trump will be having a very different policy towards Afghanistan. What will be that policy? Time will tell,
We'll be
obviously.
looking at that in the coming days. But coming back to the security realities that we are facing in Pakistan, with National Action Plan that was revised in 2021, where Pakistan has been using both kinetic and non-kinetic, of course, domains. How effective, in your opinion, this strategy have been? And do you think we need some changes at this point in time? Pakistan also launched Azm-e-Istikam in June 2024. So what kind of engagements Pakistan need at this point in time with regional players as well as with international stakeholders?
You see, National Action Plan, more needs to be done. Our problem is the implementation. There are a lot of policies. There was National Internal Security Policy, there was National Counter-extremism policy. Now there is yet another iteration, preventing of violent extremism policy. You can have policies galore, but those won't be of any effect if you don't implement them in letter and spirit. So that needs to be done. We need to be very serious as far as our political orientation is concerned. This needs to be taken as the first priority. The government in the relevant province, which is insurgency racked, needs to get its acts together, and it needs to focus all its energies in addressing this issue, because the law enforcement agencies led by Army, Police, Frontier Corps, paramilitary organizations, they are front and center. They are daily incurring the casualties and great self-immolation by the young Jawans and officers. But what is not happening is that the writ of state is not being extended in those merged districts that abut Pak-Afghan frontier. Why? Because after this merger, the frontier crimes regulation finished, the old structure went, and the new governance structure did not come into being. There are property disputes amongst the tribes. There is no writ of the state, there is no alternative dispute resolution mechanism as yet. Then there are no livelihood opportunities, and the development has also become hostage to this security situation. Unless we get this thing right, I think we will always remain vulnerable to external blandishments. We should expect external.
And how to go about it, Dr. Wali, because when Afghan Taliban, of course, came into government in 2021, Pakistan was very optimistic about its ties with Afghanistan. But what happens is the opposite of it. So how do you think Pakistan should be engaging with Afghanistan in coming days to secure its borders and to have a good brotherly ties with Afghanistan?
You see, this diplomatic engagement should be continued. We have no other option. They are our neighbors, and we have to talk to them. There's already a talk of a jirga which is going from being sponsored by the KP government. Let's see what comes of that. But all formal diplomatic channels, all security channels, those must remain intact. And we must separate our security prong from our trade prong. Somehow, if they feel that there is a benefit in trade, all those areas where trade takes place, the militancy takes a backseat. You see, there is a negative incentive for militancy in areas which are economically more remunerative. So therein lies maybe a ray of hope in which Afghan interim government needs to be sensitized of the value of this trade, because they are all beleaguered and isolated. Their assets are frozen, they are diplomatically not recognized. The only
But
opening
apparently
they have
they
is
still have the money to establish those training camps.
those. You see, that is money which is being externally. Like I mentioned, that even if something that they are getting by way of humanitarian aid, who knows how they are funneling. So a sea change in their policy is a must, but I think we need to develop trade leverages, economic leverages, and at the same time we must put our own areas and absolutely under our control through better administrative writ, better outreach of our judiciary, and better policing, and then the targeted, our kinetic operations are already on. We must sanitize all these areas, and we should stop in any further ingress. Sanitize the whole areas.
Awareness campaigns in those areas is also a must.
Yes, and especially those areas in the Lucky Marwat,
Yes.
DI Khan, and that Darban area, which is very, very underdeveloped, and it's not fed by a good communication infrastructure as well. In that area, it is very easy to find the presence of those elements. Those capitalize on insecurities, deprivations, economic grievances. So we have to eliminate that. This dragnet has to be swamp. This swamp has to be drained of all those factors that allow them to get recruitments and allow them to do these acts of terrorism that they are doing. So it's governance, it is effective policing, it is the right political orientation, and implacable wave of our kinetic operations that the army is doing. So this needs to be ensured in sync. So doing all things in rights
whole of nation approach.
Yes,
that's
the must.
Finally, Mr. Salman, your last few words on, in the light of this report and with evolving dynamics, what comprehensive strategy should Pakistan go for to ensure its internal as well as external security and its economic, relations with other countries?
Dr. Saab has already elaborated a lot upon that. So I think I'll just say that if all these elements which Dr. Saab has mentioned are being implemented in true letter and spirit, probably will not be seeing these effects re-emerging or these elements re-emerging in the future. As far as Afghanistan is concerned, like Dr. Saab mentioned, that we need to go for both kinetic and non-kinetic approaches. From non-kinetic perspective, our diplomatic channels are open. Their charge d'affaires is here, our charge d'affaires is there. Our special representative has been reinstated. They are engaging with each other. We are trying to open up certain other communication corridors with them as well. But will they have a kind of sense to understand that this interdependency between Pakistan and Afghanistan will benefit more to Afghanistan and less to Pakistan? Definitely it will benefit to us in security terms and in economic terms as well. But
and it is beneficial for the region
as well. So I think Pakistan should propagate this as much as it can and reach out to the public of Afghanistan, because there is a kind of hostility between Pakistan and Afghanistan's people right now because of the policies of the two states, or especially because of the actions of TTP and Afghanistan government. So we need to reach out to the people and understand their mindset and reach out to them to narrate them our side of the story, so they understand that what are their government is doing towards Pakistan.
Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Salman Javed, for joining us in today's program. Thank you very much, Brigadier Retired Dr. Raashid Wali, for joining us in today's program. That's all from Game Changer tonight. Take care. Allah Hafiz.